Welcome, everyone. I am Justin Paperny, Director of White Collar Advice, 7/22 on May 5th. I had hoped to do this Facebook Live a little earlier today, though as I wrote in my journal at 4:07 a.m., I was going to do it, and here I am. For those of you who are new to Facebook or YouTube, where I may post this, White Collar Advice prepares defendants for sentencing, life in prison. We also do a lot of branding and marketing work. So just really grateful to be with you and hope you find value in this short Facebook Live. What I wanted to do in this video is talk about a really frustrating call, a text message that I received Saturday evening from a client, a new client, a physician in Ohio. And this physician initially sent me a text message, and I wrote a blog about it at whitecollaradvice.com. The physician was so devastated and upset that everything he suggested to his lawyer, the lawyer ignored and just threw away as utterly worthless. As he said to me when we spoke, he is the most pessimistic person in the history of the world. I cannot believe I gave him $175,000. Nothing seems to matter. So I'm filming this video for defendants or people who have pessimistic people in your life. It requires making changes. It requires acknowledging if these people exist, and then recognizing if they're toxic and they poison you with their behavior. It's really in your interest to move on. In this case, however, it's not so easy for my client to move on because he gave him $175,000. He's paid this lawyer in full, and he needs his consideration to prepare for sentencing. So here's the issue. This new client reached out after watching a couple of videos. One, a video my partner Michael Santos filmed with a federal judge that was very persuasive in conveying why defendants should articulate through their own efforts why they're worthy of leniency. Then he watched a series of videos with my friend Dr. Phil. I spent 90 minutes or so on a podcast last year with Dr. Phil. It's also on YouTube, talking about how defendants can prepare. So he was very inspired by watching the video with the federal judge and my video with Dr. Phil, reached out to the lawyer and said, I'm really energized. I really want to take action. I really want to prepare. I want to begin to generate character reference letters. I want to begin to create this narrative, maybe a sentencing video. Work with me. I'm excited. And as I wrote in the blog at White Collar Advice, the lawyer essentially said, nothing you do is going to matter. I doubt the judge is even going to read the letters. I don't think the judge is going to read your letter. Don't waste your money on a sentencing video. Nothing's going to matter. And look, the guidelines are the guidelines. It is what it is. I loathe cliches. Okay, so this lawyer who collected $175,000 essentially said to his client, it is what it is. It sort of begs the question, why on earth did he give you $175,000, Mr. Lawyer, if you're not going to be able to work your ass off to ensure that he gets a better outcome? So that's I suppose, a different conversation. But this doctor in Ohio was so dejected because he said, I feel like nothing I do matters. What do? I want to do the letters. I want to do the narrative. So here's what I conveyed to him, and I conveyed to all of you. One, if you have pessimistic people in your life, to the extent that you can remove them, you should. Much like I filmed a video about people who have the God complex. Don't change them. Don't fix them. Move on, right? So people who are pessimistic, they always find the fault in something rather than finding the virtue. 10 minutes they spend complaining could be 10 minutes spent working on something productive, right? They will tell you 10 things that are wrong. You don't even need to get to 10 things. After they get to the first one, that's enough. I've heard enough. So because my client was stuck, I said to him, here's what I suggest. You should go all in to prepare and invest the time, knowing that maybe your judge doesn't read any of it. And that's a really interesting topic for all of you defendants. Let's work under the presumption. I believe that all federal judges, of course, read all of the letters. I don't think there should be 100 letters, but I believe defendants read. I believe federal judges read the work that's submitted in front of them. I believe they read the narratives that are submitted. Of course, they're appointed by a federal judge. That's what they're supposed to do. Of course, they're reviewing the work. But let's work under the presumption they don't. And this goes back to, I guess, my sales training more than 20 plus years ago when I was a broker at Merrill Lynch. When I was a young broker out of USC, I spent a full day doing a sales training. And one full day was spent mastering objections in sales. Well, here's the deal with respect to preparing for sentencing. This is an objection that one may not be able to overcome. And I'm not going to overcome it because I tell all of you, as I told my client, yes, there's a chance maybe the judge doesn't read it. Maybe we invest the time to create 10 or 15 beautiful, well-articulated and thoughtful character reference letters, and the judge doesn't read it. Maybe we invest the time to create a powerful first-person narrative, and the judge doesn't read it. Your lawyer's told you the judge isn't going to read it. He's the most pessimistic man I've ever heard. He was optimistic when he wanted the 175 grand, but now he's telling you nothing you do matters. So you can embrace that. You can accept that. Or you can say, regardless of what my pessimistic lawyer says, I'm going to prepare and I'm going to take action. Even if my judge doesn't read these letters, I'm going to work. So that's what we've begun to do. And what's the downside? Because every now and again, I will get this message from someone that will say, even on Facebook, we've launched a free course we're giving away, a character reference letter course. And I look at a lot of the comments on Facebook. I'm spending a little money to promote the course. And a lot of the initial comments are, the judge doesn't read the letters. The judge doesn't read the narrative. I heard that every single day in federal prison. The judge don't do nothing. The judge didn't read it. It's down. It's negative. I'm not convinced that it actually works. But even if we're working under the idea, the judge gets it, shreds it, doesn't read it, what's the downside? What's the downside in this doctor from Ohio reaching out to 15 colleagues and sharing his story and letting all of them know that he made bad choices, letting them know that he wants to do better, and that he accepts responsibility. He's so grateful that they're in his network. What's the downside in telling the story 15 times? Do you think he's more equipped to telling his story the 15th time than he was the first time? Probably. Do you think those people appreciate hearing from him and that he's accepting responsibility and he's thanking them? Probably. Now, what's the downside in writing a very thorough personal narrative? One, it's cathartic to write it. It is very cleansing to put your life on paper. So our team plays an active role in developing character reference letters and personal narratives, even if the judge doesn't read it and shreds it. Even if your lawyer tells you it don't matter. The guidelines are the guidelines. Whatever that, it's sickening. What's the downside in putting your life to paper? Maybe your case manager in prison reads it. I hear my daughter in the other room. This is the consequence of a Facebook Live on quarantine or lockdown. She may be running in at any moment. What's the downside? Maybe the case manager in prison reads it. We had 2 clients earlier today, I read in the Wall Street Journal, got released due to this pandemic, COVID-19 issue in prison. Both of them had clearly defined release plans and a narrative. I don't know how much it persuaded the case manager. Maybe they didn't, but maybe the case manager doesn't read it in prison. Guess who may read it upon your release? The probation officer. I know the probation officer read my personal narrative. It allowed me to travel to Chicago within about 6 days of being free to lecture. So as I wrap this up in the next few minutes, let me convey some very important thoughts. If you have a pessimistic person in your life, be careful. They will corrupt your character. And if you're not aware of your tendencies, which is maybe a bit of a pleaser, easily influenced, in time, you're going to be associating with them, and you're not even going to know that they're corrupting you. To the extent that you can move on, move on. To the extent that you can begin to take clearly defined actions, even if it may not amount to anything, even if this judge doesn't read the letters in the narrative, there's absolutely no downside in doing the work. And I will acknowledge on this Facebook Live, I was a pessimistic person before I went to prison. I thought everything was an absolute waste of time. What's the point of a letter? I'm going to jail. What's the point of a narrative? I'm going to prison. What's the point of working? I have to give it all to lawyers anyway. Like, I'm so grateful that friends of mine stood alongside me because I was not in great spirits. And then as I filmed in a video last week, which was the 12-year anniversary of my surrender to prison, I began to focus in prison on everything that remained versus everything that I lost. And I credit my business partner, Michael Santos, for doing that. And all of you watching, if you're interested in the criminal justice system or reform or preparing for prison, you should check out our Prison Professor podcast, because Michael's putting up a ton of content every single day to help all of you. So I went to prison a pessimistic person. No one should have associated with me. Yet I met Michael, who is the most optimistic person I'd ever known. In fact, when I got to prison and we formed a friendship, I would get up at 4 or 5. He'd get up like at 3. I'd go into the quiet room and meet him, and he'd say, "What's going on, young man?" And a part of me thought, like, what is wrong with this person? He's so upbeat. He's so happy. He's been in jail for 22 years. What is he smiling about? Is he nuts? And then the next day it was the same thing. And the next day, "How's it going, young man? You're one day closer to home. What are you going to do today to prepare you for the inevitable obstacles that wait your release?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm in jail. I don't know. What are you talking about?" I'm in jail, away from my family, away from women, away from my tool. What are you talking about? And to his credit, he didn't shun me. He didn't kick me out. He said, I know this is a difficult time. So to a degree, I want to show some empathy for those who are pessimistic. I understand it's a difficult time, but I'm filming this video with respect to the criminal justice system and a lawyer who took a huge sum of money from my client and is giving him bad advice. So that's how I'll close. I want to help all of you, any defendant, any family member watching this on Facebook, or ultimately what will be on YouTube as well, understand that the people you bring into your life really matter. And if you allow pessimistic people or negative people to derail you, you will have a miserable prison term. Miserable. As I wrote in Lessons from Prison with the help of Michael, misery loves company. We opened up a chapter in the book with that. Misery loves company. And in prison, that is it. Misery all day, all night, with people telling you you can't do nothing. Don't prepare. It doesn't matter. Start when you got 6 months to the house. Prison parlance for 6 months to the halfway house. It doesn't matter. And of course, when 6 months comes, they're too entrenched in their habit. Nothing's going to happen. It's too late. They can't even start. You've got to be an individual. You've got to think differently, understanding that as a convicted felon, you are judged differently. You can't go toe to toe with people to the degree that you once could. You've got to own it. You've got to talk about it. And that's the most important point of this video. Even if the judge doesn't read the letters, even if the judge doesn't read the narrative, the time that my client will have invested to develop the letters and to write the narrative and to make the sentencing video, he'll have honed his story. He'll have nurtured relationships. And at sentencing, here's the beauty of it. Even if the judge shredded it for the rest of his life, he will be able to say, there's nothing more I could have done to prepare. And there's a sense of dignity in that. I used to say that to Michael. What if nobody cares? I used to say that to him in prison. Like, dude, we're writing this blog. What if nobody cares? What if nobody reads it? What if it doesn't matter? And he helped me understand, as I help all of you understand, as I'm now helping my client understand. There's meaning in the journey, in the struggle. And I'm of the opinion, if you put in the work and invest the time and convey through your own efforts why you're worthy of leniency, it will help all of you. As I have no doubt it will help my client, even if the judge shreds the letter. So that's how I'll wrap up this Facebook Live at 7:34 on May 5th. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find value in it. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can go to whitecollaradvice.com to get a free copy of Lessons from Prison that chronicles my experience through the criminal justice system. I also encourage you, if you don't have time to read right now and you're more into listening, to subscribe to the Prison Professors podcast on iTunes that Michael is contributing to every day. And I know you're busy, and I'm very grateful that you've given me 12 minutes and 57 seconds of your time this Tuesday evening. Hope to return soon. Thank you so much. I wish you all well. Be safe, be healthy. Bye-bye.